Hello, guys. I want to give you a full account of what, for me, my first real psilocybin experience was like, and I'll try to give it. I remember everything that happened. There's no moment that I don't remember. I'll try to give like a complete account as much as possible. I hope I don't forget anything. So, I did take a couple of times like a little bit, and that didn't have any effect on me. Then I took a larger dose, um, and at first I thought it's not going to do much. So it kicked in a little bit later, although I didn't eat before that. But there was some interesting stuff going on. So the first experience was that I noticed a shift in noticing smaller movements, creating more sensuality. So if I would, for example, just watch a tiny movement, it would have a stronger impact. So that was kind of like the first experience of it. But then I realized for me it's very different if I have my eyes open, which is more like then like I'm on a boat and it feels more like not sure physically, like it's like moving about. Um, but I didn't have any visual impairments or changes like perception pet changes with eyes open. But what happened is when I closed my eyes, I could sense a massive internal world that I suddenly had access to. And it does definitely comes in waves. And the first wave was kind of like soft. And I noticed that it was soft because actually it works on your first chakras first. So it starts with the root chakra, and that was much easier to deal with than when it came to the upper chakras, which makes a lot of sense because the ego identity, the fear of letting go, is more on the upper chakras. The ultimate letting go is on the atlas um, bone here in the back, and that's like the last bone before the head starts. So that is known spiritually for being like the real letting go. And this is the interesting thing. So as it works up from the bottom to the top, coming in waves, it basically becomes more challenging because you really need to let go of your personhood. But I was very aware of that is kind of like the process. I assumed that's going to be the process, so I wasn't unfamiliar with total letting go. But nonetheless, it's challenging, and it was important to have some kind of anchor, especially as during the letting go phase, if there's a little bit of resistance, it can create anxiety. And so I could sense when I closed my eyes, and I could also influence how strongly I experience it depending on the depth of the breath. So if I kept the breath very shallow, very normal, it would have less of an effect than if I suddenly did like a deep breathing in, a very slow pranayama type breathing where I hold the breath for a long time, then slowly breathe out. Then it would get almost overwhelming where I felt like, wow, this is like almost too much. And then I could see as the second wave started to kick in, or it was the third one, um, I could start to see like the energy strings, the nadis. They're called like nadis in yoga, the energy strings which go through the chakras. I could literally see them visually, and I could travel along them. So I could, for example, say like, hey, I know there's something in the root chakra. Let's look at it. Let's find the source of what's going on there. And that was very evident. Now, the problem was a little bit, that was my first trip. So I was unsure what to expect. And one of the things that definitely was important to understand is when I closed the eyes, it's completely different for me than when I open the eyes. So when I close the eyes, there's this massive internal world that I have access to. When I open the eyes, I'm not so aware of it. It becomes more like this kind of like dizziness. Now, I want to give you also some context, because not only was there a spiritual awakening for the beingness I am with Muji 10 years ago, but also I'm an energy healer with extremely high sensitivity. So I can like feel chakra blockages, emotions, and so forth, even without, doing a trip. So, so I do have access to that dimension. And I think that with psilocybin, it gets amplified. That's what I felt. It feels like it's becoming visual. The ability to like travel these energy nadis becomes visual, but almost like I can decide where I go. And yeah, and then of course it's important where you put your focus. I was told that, and then I realized like how important it is. And fortunately, also I had someone who gave me like an external anchor point, which was very, very good. Twice or so, anxiety became a little bit stronger. So that kind of like gave me a little bit more like assurance. That was really good. Then what's super interesting is you want to be in a field of absolute safe space, because that was super evident, because as soon as something happens on the outside, like when a car passes and you don't know if they're gonna like talk to you or something, anxiety hits, and that anxiety also gets amplified. So you're kind of like, okay, will I be safe? Because you logically, that you can't respond in a socially acceptable manner. For example, if let's say somebody comes and says like you have to leave here, you can't drive. So I was aware of like that potentiality there, and that gives you a lot of like anxiousness, anxiety in that moment, and you can literally. I was feeling it very clearly in my like solar plexus when that happened like 2 or 3 times. So that made me aware of how important it is during a trip to have absolute safe space. That was super interesting. So I felt like even not only was I able to feel within myself, like visually and emotionally, these nadis, these energy channels, I could literally see like if I could draw it, if I could like use loose colors and like really draw how I saw it. But it was also three-dimensional, so it was almost like as if you made a 3D visualization of how you move through the nadis, through the energy channels. And I could literally say like, okay, I know I have something in the root chakra. Let's go there. Let's find the source. What is it karmic? What is it? So that was super, super exciting. Now, also what gets amplified is what I feel around me. And I think this is something I didn't explore yet very deeply, but I think what I can do is also enter into someone else's body energetically. So after I was like a little bit understanding, okay, this is what's going on within me, I literally understood I could also go external. So if somebody's lying next to me, I could go into their energy field as well. Super interesting. So that option was there, but it's not explored yet. I would say almost like I could use it as an enabler for shamanic sessions. Definitely. But here's the thing, and this is, I think, one really important thing to consider. The idea came to me, or no, the wording for it came to me. I called it like a little bit like an offset, meaning it places you into a different energy field than what you truly are. And I think from the idea that it's literally like a foreign living thing that's entering you, you could call it like that. So it feels like an offset, or it feels like it's not within the confines of your true self. It's almost like, and and that is actually not really comfortable. So I wouldn't call a trip like that comfortable. And it might be for some people, but from a spiritual awakening standpoint, just being aware of the present now and recognizing that which never moves, in which everything appears, that is what I am. I feel a very balanced sense of smoothness as that is present. Now with the shrooms, I feel more like um, an uncomfortableness, a bodily uncomfortableness. I didn't feel nausea or something like that. I had a little bit of vertigo maybe, but I didn't wasn't nausea. It wasn't. I didn't feel like vomiting or something like that. But I noticed as it was pushing up through the chakras, like I explained before, I could notice that as it hits the solar plexus, there was a little bit of nausea, not much. But I also knew that the source of the nausea is not because I'm reacting negatively to the actual substance. I'm more reacting to the fact that it's working through that it's like releasing stuff that needs to be released. And that I know from energy sessions. So when I do an energy session and I notice someone has a strong blockage in the lower chakras, sometimes it can rise like a feeling of needing to vomit. So that's kind of normal. But that I know because of I did so many tantra sessions. So I can, even though I'm going through the trip, but at the same time, I'm also aware of all the experience and knowledge that I have from the energy healing sessions. So it's like almost like I was thinking like if you don't have that experience, then I think a lot of it can be confusing. But since I have that experience, it feels like a natural extension. You know what I mean? So it's like the shrooms suddenly give you access to something a little bit deeper to what you already knew before. But if suddenly, for example, you have these visuals or whatever it is, and you have literally zero idea of it because you've never done anything remotely, you're like a very logical person, just, then it can be, I think, a little bit disbalancing. But here it was almost like it was like, oh, interesting, I can use that like a tool. That was kind of like mm, the experience. Now, what would be interesting to do the same thing with, let's say, double dose and see what other dimensions are unlocked, or if it's the same thing just more intense. That would be super interesting. Um, One thing that is, what creates a little bit this anxiousness, like if a new wave comes, so if there are like 4 waves, 5 waves, 6 waves, as the wave ramps up and you need to let go to experience the full wave, and this anxiety comes up, can you let go, or fear of death, basically, fear of are you able to breathe, etc. um, because it kind of rushes this wave, so it goes like shoo, and then it goes shoo, it goes like, it's almost like if you've ever surfed and suddenly a huge wave comes, it feels a bit like that. There's also an anxiousness to it, because you know what power this wave has and can pull you under. And I think it's actually very similar. I feel, um, yeah, I would say, the analogy is quite well, that it's like it's coming in these waves, and it can have a lot of power. Um, and especially if you're new to it, like me, there's questions like, will my body still breathe? Be able to breathe, or do I stop breathing if I, let go, stuff like that. Um, yeah, and then I think the the best way to go about it is actually when you're doing something like that, be ready to die. Be like, okay, it's fine even if I die right now. It's fine. It's okay. Um, I think that's actually quite good. What surprised me is that by using different breathing, I could like severely alter the depth of the experience. So the deeper I breathe, the slower and deeper I breathe, and also into the lower belly, etc., the more the rush was like massive. Where I was like, whoa. And so I think even if I didn't do a trip with more, just the same kind of like intensity, I could use it differently just by changing the breath and being more on my own, for example. So that's super 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 interesting. I think there's a couple of really interesting takeaways. One of the things is that I like the fact that it has a very limited timeline. Like, for example, I know from people who've done other things that it can last for 12 hours or more, and this one is you literally have like, I would say like in 4 hours you have pretty much, I wouldn't say full control, but you have, a sense of control, and that makes it very manageable. I think it's much more difficult as it if you're like 12 hours into it or more. Then I think it's a bit more challenging. um and I do feel like after effects, so I noticed that it's really easy to just like go and be super aware. What's really interesting to have like a little bit of food, like I don't know, watermelon or something, and then tasting it. That was really an interesting experience. Um, it's almost like you have to laugh about um, how juicy it is. It's like you're like super aware, and um, I don't feel like it is something that I would want to do regularly, because I'm quite fine just being aware of everything. Oh yeah, one of the very clear, but any spiritual person has that already within them, but like on a profound level. But here it was more like an a visual emotional, more like visual emotional, more visual than emotional. Like when I close my eyes, I could literally sense that everything's just like an energy soup. So there is no real person. So if you ask a question like, hey, why is person XYZ blah blah blah, then you get this very clear message. There is actually no person, it's just an energy soup. That was super clear. um So while we're talking about, differentiating things by giving them names, it's actually just one huge energy soup. And it just exists because it wants to exist without any need for growth or something. It's just a constantly turning energy soup. And maybe logically it makes also perfect sense, so it's not something outlandish. Um, yeah. Okay, so let me see what else. Now, the second day, it's very interesting because I feel like there's some residue. Makes it super easy to just be present and notice small details. Like I was looking at fish, like small fish and like a crab, and I was more aware of the way it moves without being just super present, not thinking about it. Just a different sense of appreciation maybe, but not from a personhood, more like almost like becoming aware that um that of the aliveness of things, maybe in a subtle way. Um, but I'm also super, super deeply tired. So I think it would be good to sleep, and then um, look, look again at what is present, because spiritual awakening is already gives you a sense of certain things. So it's hard. Um, it will be interesting to see that if within a few days, if that residue stays or if it just resets. Now, one of the super interesting things is it definitely released tension in my root chakra, 100%, no question about it. And that is directly related to how it works through the chakra, starting at the lower chakra. And because I also went in there and asked questions like along the nadi during the trip, where it's like, okay, what's the source of this? And it's almost like it released an unconscious fear. There's something unconscious that has been released without me being hyper aware of it, which I usually am, but here it seems like, and it wasn't released through like a crying catharsis. It was more like released through an understanding. It seems, because I didn't have like further crying out of that energy. And today, so day after, when I was sitting at the lake, I had like a hard on, and I knew it is because my root chakra is unblocked. So that was super interesting. And I wonder if that stays or if something external will happen again that will make it tense up. Um, so it did have, I could say it did have an immediate therapeutic effect on my root chakra, 100%, no question about it. Um, and any kind of movement in that energy will have some residual, like long-term effect, even if it might seem to come back a little bit maybe in the future. But that's too early to tell. So, um, and of course, a completely unblocked root chakra that lasts for very long or forever for this incarnation would be a major energy shift in my body, no question about it. Like a major energy shift. Um, so that's very interesting. So if I were to rate it from 0 to 10, like the amount I took, the experience I had, I think I would have to put it in categories, just like a reviews for Google Maps or something. So a category is one category interesting, it's an 8. It's quite interesting. A category joyful, enjoying it, I would put it at a 3. It's not very enjoyable in my opinion. Now apparently it gets better if I take more, so I'm curious to see. Um, yeah, it's not pleasantly joyful. Um, it's more like unsettling, not in an emotional way, more like an energetic way. I didn't feel like emotions where I would like, this is, oh my god, this is so unsettling or so. That wasn't the issue. I kind of like being aware of everything that happens instead of like just experiencing something and then afterwards forgetting everything. So it was kind of cool that I remembered everything. Um, but I think in the next trip, I think I would be able to remember no, to like really take my experience with everything in life that I don't know about. I need to repeat it like maybe 4, 5, 6, 7 times, and then I really start to master it, to like really understand what it's about, what you can do with it, etc. Um, and now another very interesting thing is I don't remember a moment, maybe a very tiny moment, where I was like, who's actually aware of what's happening now? So you kind of fall into the experience without realizing that you're just the observer that is just observing that experience. So it wasn't like, um, It wasn't like it wasn't coming. I wasn't anchored in like spiritual awakening while doing the session. It was more like curiosity and using it as a tool, but unconsciously. It wasn't just like. Um, but I think the second time I could actually do it that way. So like with the intention, hey, this is a tool, so I can actually direct what I want to do with it. Um, which is interesting given my high intuition on how I can use it, how I would be potentially able to use it. Um, uh, yeah, I think this is super important also for me to be clear that it's not particularly pleasant, um, because uh, maybe also because I understand pleasure like and being 9.5 out of 10 when I wake up in the morning, like feeling good. If there's something that's not so good, it knocks me unusually down. As if someone, for example, if someone has depression or someone is in a bad mood generally, and they like take this, maybe it lifts them up actually. So it knocks me down a bit, not in a disastrous way, but kind of like, is this really necessary kind of way? Um, if I'm already in such a good mood. Um, but then looking at the root chakra and feeling that lifted, uh, the question comes: is it like then worth it? Um, it really doesn't matter. I think it's really just comes from the mind. Like the desire to change something just completely comes from the mind, and um, yeah, it's just a very. It's like as if if you ask yourself, is it better to live in an apartment or in a house? It makes no difference. It's just existence is existence. So I think it comes from that perspective that I see the trip. So it's like, do I want to move from a nice villa with a nice swimming pool into a tiny apartment next to the train station? Probably not. And this is what the trip feels a bit like, that you're like opening up to a lower vibration almost, but it allows you to see maybe on a spot where you haven't looked at yet. So it's kind of like deliberately going down into the basement to clean out the basement, although you don't really want to. But after, when you go up, you feel kind of better. I think that's how I would explain it to me, at least to the amount that I took, um, with what I took. Um, so that's very interesting. And I think I explained it very well right now. Just that, if that feeling of how I see it. Um, Let me see if there's something else that I want to share. Mm, I had pretty much nothing negative within me. So there wasn't anything, there wasn't a bad emotion or something, um, where I was like, oh, this, I know, anger is overwhelming or something. But maybe that's because I didn't take enough for what I would need to go even deeper. Maybe. So that's definitely something I should. But I feel like I'm not sure I would need it a third time. So a second time would be interesting, taking more. Maybe a third time, even taking then even more. But I don't feel like it's something that I would want to do continually over a certain period of time. I don't think it's that. But I'm a curious person. I'm like an adventurous person. So maybe there's times for it when you feel it intuitively. Maybe if it were more of a pleasant experience, like if it were a real pleasant experience, then I would be like, yeah. I don't like the idea that it's kind of intoxicating, meaning it feels like as if you're drunk, or if you've been too long on a boat. Kind of like, I don't like the fact that you can't, um, that you need this tremendous safe space so you don't have to worry at all about what's going on around you. Um, that is to me a little bit, creates a little bit of tension there. Um, um, Now, also super interesting is depending on who you do it with, I guess. But generally, if you do it or not do it with someone, you bring in their energy field as well and their traumas and everything, and that's also an that brings in an element of chaos also potentially, which is not good if you want to take full advantage. So I would say, I would go so far to say that taking the trip on your own is actually preferable, because then you can fully focus, um, and draw out the potential of what is there, because it's almost like it's a very powerful tool, and it's almost like a ritual, a celebration when you take it. Then it's almost like a shame if you don't use it fully. It's like if you win the lottery ticket and you win 1 million, but you only decide to pull out like 10,000. It's like you leave everything else on the table, and that's what I feel like. If I feel like, if I would do it on my own, I think I could take advantage of it like totally. And it's interesting because you do need, especially if it's new, I feel like you do need certain hours in order to be able to reap, in order to learn how to navigate it. And I think once you understand how to navigate it, then you can really start exploring. And I know this from Tantra massages. So only after a few hundred Tantra massages, I started to become an expert on it. And then I could play with that energy. And I think it's here, it's gonna be super similar. If you take it 20, 30 times, then you're like, now I understand how it moves when I do this and so forth. Um, um, but then also I'm super aware that you cannot come too much from the ego, like I'm the doer of things, because then you're also leaving out the experience of what it means if you as a person completely vanish, and it's just the energy doing its energy thing, and not you trying to direct it in a shamanic way or whatever. So I think there's both elements to that as well. So on one hand, you can use it like as a tool and dig, and the other is like the just let it do its thing without having to do anything at all. Um, Intuitively, right now, I would say I wouldn't be looking forward to do it again necessarily, like the feeling of it. Um, but also it's just very fresh, so it will be interesting to see like how it feels in a different setting, maybe a little bit more even safer setting, etc., etc., etc. And it's when I took Mariana after awakening, I realized I don't need Mariana at all, like at all. But this is a bit different because it becomes like a shamanic tool. I would definitely call it a shamanic tool. Of course, it's not DMT, it's not ayahuasca, but it's definitely a shamanic tool if you understand it to use it that way. Um, the I wasn't. I'm a pretty much of an iconoclast and avant-garde, so I'm not shocked by certain things. So when I suddenly see that I can flow along the nadis into like, I naturally release a lot of DMT also, not all the time, but sometimes I do in sleep. And when I was younger, I had much more DMT while I was sleeping. I could notice that, like with geometries and stuff. So for me, it's not like I'm entering a space where I'm like, whoa, what is that? You know, it's just more like a curiosity. Oh, okay, this is what it is. And it's like a new toy, but for an energy healer. So it's kind of like, oh, interesting. And then so I could flow along the nadis, the energy channels, and then literally like along the spine or along the body, like decide where I go to along these lines. So I could literally like, it was almost like I'm floating in a three-dimensional space along the energy channels, and then I could just decide to, hey, let's go to the root chakra, exactly where the cause is of that. And I wonder if that release that happened, because it feels much lighter, my root chakra, and obviously it's energetically open, otherwise I wouldn't have had this hard on. So it's an energetic symptom of this open root chakra. Um, I wonder if it would also have happened if I hadn't asked the question and probed into the root chakra, if it would have done the work on its own. I do see 100% that at least this shrooms, that they work exactly like that. So they start at the bottom and go through the chakras. And as it pushes up, that's where the nausea from some people comes from, because when it hits the solar plexus, it becomes a little bit more challenging if there's a lot of unresolved stuff. And on the heart chakra level, I felt a little bit like I was seeing greenish. I had like a little bit like green flashing. And I looked at also someone else's heart chakra at that moment. I could see like sense like green flashing. Like if I opened the eyes, I could see like a little bit green flashing. Um, and then the very much upper chakras was just pure letting go. Where it's like, fuck it. If I don't breathe, I just die. Whatever, doesn't matter. Let's just do it. So, and I just let it rush through. But for me, this was super interesting because I felt like at a certain point I still have control, and then I was like concentrated on the breathing. Don't forget to breathe, and then I did the deep slow breath, like the holding it until like super long, and then super slow, like breathing out, and that created a massive rush. And I think the rush then was almost like as if I opened the channel so much that I allowed the shrooms and everything to work throughout the whole energy field and not just the lower chakras. Because as long as it's below the solar plexus, if you feel like you still have control, upwards it's like it's taking over. And because of that breathing, it became like a super fast rush, like as if you were on a roller coaster that suddenly like goes super quickly up, not down, but super quickly up. And I was like, whoa. um yeah, so I think it's not the most pleasant experience. It's an interesting tool. It definitely leaves residue on your energy system, because there would be no point to doing it unless there would be some finality to it which has a final impact on your energy system during normal waking hours. For just pleasant entertainment, I think it would be a little bit um almost like uh not in its entirety satisfying. I think it needs that spiritual component where it literally integrates into your daily waking life, whether energetically, emotionally, trauma based, etc. I mean, it's all the same. Um, and so I'll definitely report also on how I experience life and interaction the days after. I can already this day after, although it's fully after 6 hours, it's fully out of the system. I do feel a bunch of frequencies that are residue from the trip. So that's super interesting. Um, but also, like I said, there's a strong tiredness, so I have to check whether it's coming from that or from the trip itself. Maybe it's a combination of both. Um, I can definitely say that the day after, it's much easier to just observe myself, because like see that I'm not the one who's talking, just being super present, not thinking. It's almost like almost like unnaturally easy. Yeah. I think that's it for now. If I figure out something else to tell you, I do definitely recommend. Um, well, I can't recommend anything, but let's just say anchoring is super important, and ideally, a spiritually awakened person hold the space. Um, it's very, very, very. Uh, I mean, from where I stand, it's not it. I think I would have to take much more for it to be revolutionary in a way. Yeah.